Hello and welcome to another InventRight TV show. I'm one of the co-founders here at InventRight. My name is Andrew Krause, and we have Brad Kons, one of our amazing coaches on today. And what he wants to talk about today, hey Brad, is two things that people before they become InventRight students or when they're just working on licensing their products, regardless if you become a student of ours or not, are worried about are filing a provisional patent application if you haven't done it before, and then two, reaching out to companies. So Brad, these are two things that people, they're not necessarily in the right mindset. They're worrying about things that aren't really a problem. And we're just going to help them out a bit. Let's do PPAs first. So what are people thinking they have to do when they file a PPA that's not true? And what's the reality of filing a PPA, and why is it pretty freaking easy once you get used to it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say the biggest hangup most people would have is they look at an actual patent. If you look up a patent on Google Patents, you'll see all of those, all the verbiage, and you'll think to yourself, I can't do that, and you don't have to. Like you can use software. We have the Smart IP software, at InventRight that walks you through it step by step and teaches you how to write a solid PPA. And that's how I encourage my students is don't look at the whole PPA. And you just got to take it one step at a time.
I mean, I agree with you. People go on Google Patents or the Patent Office site and they look at patents like, whoa, this is like another language. But they don't know that when you write a PPA, it can be written in common English. It doesn't have to be written like that. So if they know that, it's like, oh, a PPA looks different than a patent application on the Patent Office site.
Yeah, it really does. And when you file the PPA, no one's even really going to see it. So it's not like if you have a typo in there, it's going to be the end of the world. I mean, we want you to write a solid PPA, but yeah, I think you don't aim for perfection with PPAs. You just want to write something solid to get you to the next level.
Let's ask that. To your knowledge, has it ever bitten one of our students in the butt that they didn't do their PPA perfectly?
No, not to my knowledge.
Yeah, not to mine either. And I've been the co-founder for 22 years. But people really worry about that. We get a small percentage of students get really obsessed with the provisional patent, and to the point at which a small percentage of them, I have to talk to them. You've had a few students you've sent over to me, and I've talked them off the ledge, and I say, look, filing a provisional, 80% of it's just being an inventor. You just got to think about the variations, workarounds, improvements, include those other variations. And a lot of inventors don't do that. And you could brainstorm that with your coach. You could go, what are the other product variations here that could be included, and covering them, because a lot of inventors don't do that. And then our Smart IP software handles the wording. And then between those two things, I have students that don't have a GED. They don't have a high school degree, and they're able to file it just fine. So it's not this terrible thing that people think it is.
It's more of a mental hang up, and it can really just stretch out and take weeks or over a month, and it doesn't have to. It could literally, you could be done with it in a few days.
So do some of your students get too lax with it, and then others get too obsessed, and most are in between? I've seen a few students like, okay, you need to spend a little bit more time thinking that through. So and that's what we do. We emphasize, all the coaches emphasize variations, workarounds, improvements. And all our coaches are inventors, so you're very creative. So when somebody's got this doorstop, you could go, well, that could be done like this or this. One thing I always say, Brad, is inventors, they lose their creativity when it comes to filing a PPA because they've been inventing it, thinking about it for so long, and they're like, no, this is what it is, this is what it is. And they're not thinking about those variations. Have you experienced that they have a hard time getting outside the box?
Yeah, sometimes they do. And I try to tell them, you need to be just as creative, when you're writing your PPA, because you want to try to, prevent a workaround. So, try to broaden it out so someone couldn't work around you if they wanted to.
Knock yourself off, basically.
Yeah, it's a worst case scenario, but still, it's kind of fun when you think about all the bells and whistles your product could have and things like that. And you can add that in your PPA.
Okay. So PPAs, not so scary. Anybody can file them. They can be written in common English. It's not going to look like what you see on the Patent Office site, like a regular patent. So don't freak out about that. So how about reaching out to companies? People are really fearful. You mentioned to me, you said sometimes I'll get students, they'll rip through the steps, but then they'll just be like a deer caught in headlights when it comes
deer
to
in headlights.
And what do they do? So you have like a meeting and like they didn't get it done, they didn't reach out, and what happens when that happens?
I've had some students say, you know what, I just didn't realize this was going to be such a problem for me. Like they obviously never done phone calls, and there was just some fear. I mean, almost like fear of speaking, public speaking. I think they can kind of put that up there on that pedestal of public speaking, even though it's just one-on-one with someone on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot of fear that can build up in your mind, and we're here to make that fear go away.
Okay, so how do you help people deal with that? So there are different ways to reach out. Is there some techniques for kind of getting going without making phone calls yet, or?
Absolutely. I'll tell them to try to connect with people on LinkedIn first. That's still a personal approach, because they get to see your profile, you get to see theirs, without actually talking on the phone. Mm-hmm. Same with email. You can create some dialogue back and forth through email. So yes, if students have a really hard time or have high anxiety talking on the phone, I'll direct them to LinkedIn and email first.
Once they get more comfortable with that, obviously you're not going to get every single company on LinkedIn or via email. Yeah. Sometimes you just got to pick up the phone. Does that make them a little bit more comfortable to get on the phone now? Because they actually got some feedback, like they talked to some companies, they realized they're not saying terrible things. And
yes, I think it kind of gets them over the hump. They'll see that there's potential interest, and then it excites them. And then, it's my job as a coach is to kind of get them over that hurdle. Like, okay, well, if that excited you to get that initial interest, how much more is it going to excite you to get someone on the phone and start talking terms, start talking a licensing contract? And so you just gotta see the end, the end goal. You gotta keep that in sight as you're going through some of the things. It may not be as fun. I think a lot of inventors, they love the creative aspect, and I'm one of those guys too. I can spend so much time in the inventing parts and working on the sales sheet and the marketing material, but some of these things like calling companies, working on the PPA, they may not seem as fun. And I tell students, you don't have to like it as much, but you still have to do it. I mean,
you're pretty much guaranteed to not be just as much fun. I've had some students saying, we've had some students in the past that are like, they were terrified of making calls and they broke through that. And now they're like, I love it. No, this isn't most. And then others are like, I don't really love it, but I know I need to do it. I got it. I'm not worried about it anymore. But I've had some students, they're so energized by overcoming something they were so fearful of and now being good at it, that they almost enjoy it as much as the inventing. I would say that's a small percentage. I would say most people, even our coaches, most people like still nothing is as much fun as coming up with the idea and brainstorming it. Nothing. And I think people need to accept that.
They do. Yeah, just come to terms with it. It's just one of those other steps you have to do. If everything was easy and everything was fun, everyone would be doing this, but they're not. So it takes that persistence and dedication to get through some of those things you don't necessarily love to do to see that end result.
So when you get people comfortable using LinkedIn and you're trying to get them on the phone a bit, some people are still like, oh no, I just want to. Some of those same people will just want to do emails, and then when they get interest and you're like, you're going to get them on the phone, aren't you? You're gonna.
Yeah, I mean, eventually you're going to want to get them on the phone to start talking, terms and all of that. But if they want to try to do it through LinkedIn and email up to that point, I'm okay with that. But I still want to plant that seed that you do need to talk to them on the phone at least once or twice.
Yeah. So baby steps. For those of you, whether you become a student of ours or not, if you're afraid of reaching out, if you reach out via LinkedIn, via email, might not be quite as scary for you. You're still going to get what you perceive as rejection, but it's not really. It's just no's or no response is really common, right?
It is common.
And so get used to that, which is another thing they need to get used to. Why are they fearful about reaching out? They're fearful about being rejected. Maybe somebody saying the idea is stupid. Maybe somebody not being polite to them, hanging up or something like that. What are some other things you think people are fearful of? What's going through their heads?
Oh, no, I think you answered most of them, but literally a lot of those are just thoughts. I mean, if someone's in the business, they're going to be professional. Whether they say it's not a fit, I've never had anyone tell me this idea is terrible. But like you could think that they may think this idea is terrible.
Right.
You're just conjuring up those thoughts in your head.
The other thing you and I were talking about, sometimes they're fearful of getting interest. Oh, but what if I get interest? What am I going to do then? And then they're not reaching out because of that.
Yeah,
right?
That can happen. I've seen it happen multiple times.
So I think it's good for you, for those of you that are watching, maybe you haven't started doing this. You have an idea and you haven't started reaching out. But I think for Brad to address these things, for us to address these things, we're helping you get out of your own head in a space that you're probably going to be in soon anyway, at least to some extent. Some people have these thoughts and they push past them, right, Brad? But most inventors don't, because most inventors come up with ideas and they never really push their ideas out in any significant way or at all to companies. So this must be a major issue for most inventors. We even know it is. Yeah.
They got to get out of their comfort zone. And that's our role as coaches, to help you get out of that comfort zone and move on.
Well, the other thing, they need to accept that they need to get out of their comfort zone. Some people think like, I'll just get some company to sell this for me, and they end up with these invention, promotion, scam companies, right? I'm not going to say anything in particular about them. But because they're so fearful about reaching out, and we're here to tell you guys, you can do it. You really can. Start out small, but don't push out just one or two companies, right, Brad? I mean, you always push out to a bunch.
Right. As many as you can.
Yeah,
as many as you can.
So thank you so much, Brad, for your insight. Remind everybody to take care, keep inventing, and we'll catch up with you next time. See you guys.
There's a great idea in each of us. But it's truly magical to see it come to life. Sharing your creativity with the world has never been easier. We can help.